The modern workplace is an incredibly diverse environment, and the need for staff flexibility to be able to achieve their objectives is more and more important. I'm here with the Vice-Chancellor today to talk about workplace flexibility. So, Vice-Chancellor, if I could ask you to expand on why it's important for staff to be able to work flexibly within the university.
Well, as you mentioned in your opening comments, Scott, I think the modern workplace is very complex, very diverse. We need to recognise there are many external factors that impact on our staff, and we need to provide opportunities for staff to be able to work as flexibly as they can, given the circumstances they face, to try and ensure that we have the level of productivity we need, to have the level of staff morale that we need, because flexibility in the workplace, particularly in the modern workplace, is not just important for our current staff and to ensure that we retain our staff. It's very important for the recruitment of new staff. This is a very important part of flexibility in the workplace. I think there's a very important aspect at the moment and has been for some time, but we need to recognise that family responsibilities and carer responsibilities mean that we need to be compassionate and caring in providing staff with flexibility when it comes to meeting those external pressures in their life. And if we're able to do that as flexibly as we can, then I think we'll have a more productive workforce, and that's a very important part of the modern organisation.
So, Vice-Chancellor, how does Western support its staff in working flexibly, and what options do we have available that we provide for people?
I think it's important to recognise there are a variety of reasons that staff members may need at any particular point in their life more flexible working arrangements, and we can run through the sorts of circumstances that might arise. It could be in relation to the care of school-aged children or elderly or dependent relatives, and they need to spend more time in those carer responsibilities. There may be some very difficult and challenging personal circumstances, and unfortunately we need to recognise they occur, as difficult as they may be, and to provide more flexibility to support staff through what might be very difficult personal circumstances. From time to time, the caring for someone with a disability or a staff member who might have a disability, and how we might be able to provide more flexibility in the workplace to support them. And of course there are times when staff are studying or they're seeking to upgrade their skills and again to be more productive and of even greater value in the workplace. And how do we support those staff in those external activities that are directly relevant to their work at the university? So there's a range of circumstances that arise. Now, there are many ways in which the university seeks to provide that flexibility in the workplace. So we have a range of paid parental leave arrangements, of course, flexible return to work arrangements that staff can access. There are personal leave, study leave, and of course there are ways in which staff can purchase additional leave at various times when they need even more leave to address some of those difficult circumstances. We have a long-standing flexi leave arrangement inside the university, and we provide the sorts of technologies increasingly nowadays that enable staff to work in a variety of situations and settings. They can work from home when the need arises, they can access their email and various other parts of what they need in terms of software and other technologies to support them in the workplace from various locations. And that's an important part of the flexibility we need to provide to assist. One of the other advantages, I think, from the technology perspective in recent times has been the introduction of Zoom. And I think this has been a great initiative for the university, and I think our IT people have done a great job in rolling this out, and the usage has grown dramatically, and it demonstrates that high quality, highly reliable video conferencing technology also provides an opportunity not only for people to be in different places when they're working to meet those flexible needs that are impacting on their lives, but also to minimise travel for our staff so that we don't have people on the roads at difficult times. Again, that's about flexibility and it's about productivity and ensuring that people are able to communicate effectively. So Zoom, I guess, is another great example of a technology that we're rolling out. But it's very important that flexibility is seen at the individual level so that managers and supervisors can work with individual staff members to ensure that those circumstances that are impacting on a person at a particular time can be taken into account in designing a flexible work arrangement.
Barney, there can be a range of misconceptions about flexible work from people for the staff member to feel comfortable about asking for the flexible arrangement, for the manager in being sure that they can approve that arrangement and still have the obligations of the work unit met. What do you think is the role of the manager in sort of assisting with that, if you like?
Look, I think the role of the manager is critical, the supervisor is critical here, not simply because individual staff should feel able to ask and inquire about and get advice and guidance on flexibility in the workplace, but managers need to be well informed. They need to understand what is available within the university's suite of flexible work arrangements that they can bring to a discussion with a staff member to suggest more flexible ways of working. So there's a responsibility on managers to be well informed, and there's a responsibility on managers to ensure that they convey that information to staff, and staff need to feel confident that they can go to their manager, they can have a conversation about the circumstances they're facing at a particular time and to seek guidance about how they can continue to be productive and support the university in their role, but to do it in a more flexible way that reflects the circumstances they're in at that particular moment in time. So it's a very important aspect of the relationship between managers and staff that there is an open discussion, that it's an informed discussion. We have material available on the website, of course, to guide people in relation to flexible working arrangements. Our HR office is available to provide guidance and advice, not just to managers but also to staff members. And we need to have functional, flexible working environments and arrangements. So there's a very important aspect here of the relationship between the manager and the staff member to not only work through and provide the support the staff member needs, but to ensure the requirements of the office and the particular workplace are being met at that time. So it's a very important role for the manager to be well informed and to be open and transparent in providing information to staff.
So, Vice-Chancellor, how do you encourage flexibility among your staff?
Well, as the Vice-Chancellor, I'm often out of the office, and I think it's the nature of my role that I'm often either at meetings in the city or at different campuses or en route to meetings right around Western Sydney and quite frequently travelling interstate and overseas. So in that environment, I need to stay in contact with my staff. So in this office, of course, we're communicating regularly using email, Zoom, of course on the phone when necessary. And I recognise that from time to time it's important for my staff, for personal circumstances, to be located at a different campus for a while, if that's closer to home and other aspects of their responsibilities externally are impacting on their working life at a particular time. I think it's important to recognise that, so we're flexible about that. Because I'm travelling, I can be more flexible about where the staff are located. And of course we recognise that staff in all parts of the university have carer responsibilities and personal circumstances from time to time that we need to recognise. And I think we can work flexible hours in an office, even though this is a relatively small office, so staff can adjust their time in the office, what time they're starting, what time they're finishing, and support each other to ensure that the office runs very effectively, but yet they have that opportunity to meet those external requirements on them from a personal or professional perspective. And I think that's very, very important. And it adds not simply, I think, to ensuring that the office runs as smoothly as possible, but I think it's very important that the morale of our staff is high and maintained at a high level, because that leads to productivity and enjoying being in the workplace. And that's a very important part of a very busy office with, very significant responsibilities. Now, Scott, you're a senior member of staff in this organisation, but you're also the father of small children, I think 3 under 6,
yes,
that you just told me. So you've got very significant responsibilities with your partner for the care of those children. How do you balance the responsibilities you have here at the university and how do you bring that flexibility to your role?
Yeah, look, it is a challenge, and I've often commented that at times in your life you feel if you're being a great parent, you're not being a great employee, and vice versa, if you're being a great employee, you're not being a great parent. So it is a real challenge to sort of balance all those things from time to time. And in years gone by, I have to admit, when you're building your career, you do feel a little more uncomfortable sort of asking for some of that flexibility. But I think, as you've touched on, it's really important for a manager to be able to have an understanding that sometimes work is going to encroach on life, and equally life is going to encroach on work. And I think certainly I've got a manager who understands that at the moment, which has made that far more easy for me to navigate those set of circumstances. And I think some of the things I've accessed over the last few years is obviously study leave. I did a master's through the university here and got support from the university as part of the staff development program for that. Even minor things like working from another campus. So if I've got a half a day of meetings at Parramatta now, once upon a time I would always drive back to Penrith, whereas now I sort of think, well, do I really need to spend that sort of 45 minutes in the car with pack up and pack down and that kind of stuff? Is it time better spent here and using a hot desk or something like that? We use a fair bit of that. Travelling around traffic, I think one of the challenges of this city these days is just the nature of traffic, and often Zoom, you mentioned earlier, has really helped with things like that. So from time to time where there's a 9 a.m. meeting that you might have to spend an hour and a half to do what would normally be a half an hour trip in a car to get to a 9 a.m. Zoom meeting, if it's one that's not critical for you to be there in person, looking at things like, well, how about I work from home before that? I attend the Zoom meeting from home and then drive in and do the trip in an hour less than it would take if I did it in the peak hour and things like that. And then most recently, I think I've had to use, with the kids, we've had childcare challenges where I've had to take some personal leave, and that personal leave hasn't been a rigid half day of I'll work 8 till 12, but it's been a wake up, get the kids moving, get one off to school, come home, have the laptop open on the bench, take phone calls, excuse myself from the Vice-Chancellor or someone else when they call and say, if you hear children in the background, this is what it's about. So it's been fairly handy being able to do that just where we've had no other option. I can't always expect that it's going to be my wife that has to drop everything and deal with that, and I certainly don't. And I think she'd remind me if I did anyway. And look, I've got a job where in terms of maintaining my commitments to work, where I'm on call 24/7. Barney and I have spoken to each other at ungodly hours from time to time where there's been a media or communication issue. So I think ultimately it comes down to trust and on the employer's side and accountability on the employee's side.
And I think you've touched on something that's really important in the context of flexibility, and that is particularly when you've got family responsibilities as you and your partner have, and that is to take personal leave. Not to find all the reasons that you're too busy in the workplace to take leave, but to take it and to spend that time during school holidays and at other times with children. I think one of the challenges for many of our staff is that they accumulate leave, they don't take it when they need it. And I think it's very important for staff to recognise the importance of taking that time away, being with the family, enjoying the balance in life. And I think one of the things we've introduced in the last couple of years is to give a more substantial 2-week shutdown period over Christmas as a very deliberate strategy to encourage more staff at the end of every busy year to take some time off and not to come back into the office too quickly, and to see the university function, I think, more effectively because of it. So encouraging people to take leaves.
Yeah, and that personal leave sort of flexibility has been great because I've gone, well, I'm too busy to actually take a day off to look after the kids, but if I can juggle the two things, it means I'm doing my best, sometimes not great, but to manage both sets of commitments. And as I said, that could mean 1 hour I'm quickly changing a nappy or feeding a child, to the next one taking phone calls and back on email for another solid hour.
So Scott, what about the other side of this? At the personal level, I think you've outlined ways in which you're adapting to flexible arrangements with the support of your manager. What about as a manager for the staff that you're supervising? How are you encouraging the same level of flexibility in your
Well, look, I'd hope my staff say that I help them have those conversations. We've certainly had in the team, we've got quite a young team in the Office of Marketing and Comms, and we've had a range of our staff, both male and female, take advantage of the various parental leave aspects, whether that be maternity leave or whether that be parental leave when a baby's born. I've taken 3 times now, 2 weeks of that leave myself as a baby's born. So we certainly have that. Certainly from the study leave perspective, I've been open to encouraging staff to applying for those opportunities and then utilising the various flexibility options that we have. And then I think you noted earlier, it's important to note that it's not only, parental leave is such an obvious one that so many people have to do, but there is a range of other carers leave, whether that's a staff member needing to care for a family member, or whether that's, a variety of other life circumstances, and certainly just try and have that conversation where, as I said, it really comes down to trust and accountability. Trust on my part that my people want to meet their obligations for the university, and accountability on their part that in getting this flexibility that they're going to try and meet those obligations. So that's the way we try and juggle it in our office.